Hello there. What's going on, everybody? We're going to be talking about the rise of Skywalker, Star Wars Episode 9 tonight in this live stream. And I've got all the lightsabers humming right now, along with my trusty yellow from Galaxy's Edge. And we're going to be talking all about this movie tonight, specifically unanswered questions. And this might be a little bit loud. I'm going to cut these off real quick, because... there you go. One. All right. Cutting them off a little bit. Oh. Or should I leave the red ones on? All right. I figured that might have been a little bit too noisy. So, yeah, we're going to talk all about it. I've got a list of my own questions. And, I saw the movie a second time tonight, so spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about specifics and spoilers from the movie. If you have not had a chance to go see the movie yet, and you don't mind spoilers, then I encourage you to stick around. If you do, and don't worry, I'm not doing any of the Life Day giveaways in this video. So if you were hoping to see if you won something or not, you will not have to stick around. Of course, you can come back later and watch, but I don't want to say, oh, you have to sit through the spoilers to see if you won. So if you don't want the spoilers, you can bounce now. But in case you're not curious, in case you're curious about the Life Day thing, I have 12 giveaways running all throughout December. There's a couple more of them left. If you're interested in winning any of these things, they're pretty much all Star Wars and gaming related. You just have to be a subscriber, leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. So we are going to get started here shortly with a list of things for... man, I love this thing. I want to go back to Galaxy's Edge. But yes, if you are interested in that, all you have to do is be a subscriber and leave a comment. But yes, so we're going to be talking about unanswered questions, because I think that's probably one of the things that the critics of Episode 9 have a lot of points maybe to make, is that, hey, this thing did not answer all of our questions. And I think there's a lot of questions that we can ask. And so I have written down a couple. I will also be taking, because this is a live stream, I will be taking questions from the audience to some extent. So I will definitely try to get to those. Since I have the lightsabers off, I am going to reposition a little bit and change chairs and get a little more comfortable here. And now, all right, that's a little bit better. That's a little bit better. We got this thing up here too. We didn't see any of those in Episode 9. So I'm okay with that. Speaking of which, speaking of weapons and what we did or did not see in Episode 9, this thing, if you ever get a chance to check out one of these things, this is the Black Series one. It's crap, right? Watch this. Oh, it works now. It works this time. Okay. 9 times out of 10, it swings open, and then they're crooked and cockeyed and all that stuff. So this time it actually works. All right. It's actually pretty cool when it works, but it only works once out of 10 or 20 times. It's all right. Well, I made a liar out of me. All right. So, how can a standard... Oh, my goodness. All right, so CJ comes in with a question. That's one of my questions. That's on my list. Don't worry, we're going to get to that one. There could be more to it than that, but I want to preface this with something before you guys jump to conclusions on whether or not I liked the movie. I did see it a second time today. Took the kids to see it this time. They had a good time. They enjoyed it. I think children will enjoy a lot of movies, especially when their dad takes them, or if a parent or a loved one takes them. They get to go to a movie theater. It's a fun, enjoyable time. So I don't think it's hard to impress kids. Some adults are harder to impress, and I can certainly understand whether or not you liked the movie or not. And I'm not trying to convince anybody that they need to feel a particular way. Personally, I loved it. I loved the movie. I also acknowledge that it had flaws, and that's kind of one of the things I'm talking about today. Most movies that I enjoy have flaws. There's most perfect movies I don't really care for all that much. I think a lot of classic movies are made extremely well, but I'm more interested in blockbuster type movies. I tend to be, so that's just my own taste. And I'm not trying to say that anybody needs to feel a certain way. But what other things I love about the problems with Star Wars movies is all the nitpicking. It was in the top 9, maybe. I mean, there's actually 11 though if you count Solo and Rogue One. So yeah, but it's funny. I would put it in my top 10 Star Wars movies, that's for sure. I don't know. I'm gonna have to reevaluate. It's gonna take some time before I can figure out exactly where in my top 10 it's gonna go, and I'll do another. I'll do it. That'd be a good kind of maybe in January or something like that, I'll do like my top 11 Star Wars movies and do a thing about how I rank them, and then let it stew for a while. And then once it comes out on DVD and you've had a lot more time to analyze everything, go back and see, hey, is it still where it was? I've had some changes on things like episode 8 and not really liking it that much, but still liking it. And then it goes rocketing to the top of my list, and then I think it's back down a little bit now. I think now it's actually farther down on the list after episode 9. So. But all of that said, we're going to be talking about some of the unanswered questions from Rise of Skywalker. So the first one that I want to ask you guys is, what do you think Finn was going to say to Rey? I never told you, and then we never got to find out what that was. My opinion on the movie, by the way, if you're just joining us, I really enjoyed it. It's not perfect, and one of the things we're talking about in here is some of those, some of those imperfections, like things that maybe went unanswered. So yeah, so that's, yeah, like I think the most obvious thing for Finn, and some of you guys are answering, and some of you guys have some of my thoughts as well. The first thing, I think the most obvious thing is, here we're going to be like, oh, well, he loves Rey. He's always kind of, since episode 7, he's always kind of had a thing for Rey. And maybe that's a little too obvious. I think that was good enough for the audience. I feel like, and from what I've heard, there was supposed to be a little bit more with Finn. There was supposed to be a little bit more, like a little more of a sub-arc with him. And I'm kind of bummed that we didn't get that, because Finn was one of the characters I kind of liked. I actually was probably my favorite character from episode 7. And then he had very little presence in episode 8, so he's one of my least favorite characters of episode 8. So, this isn't a crack on John Boyega, not the actor at all. I absolutely love him. Out of everybody in these movies, John Boyega is probably my favorite person and actor to be in the films. But the character of Finn, I felt, was given a whole lot of awesomeness in episode 7, and kind of a sham show in episode 8. So, I was hoping 9 he would get a whole lot more awesomeness, and he got some. It was kind of in the middle of the road for this particular movie. He got a lot more respect, and he certainly has grown, but he didn't get like the whole Jedi treatment. And that's what I was really hoping. So I think the whole "I love you" thing, or his feelings for her, was not it. I think he might have said that later on. That would have been easy. But then at the same time, he's also kind of got this thing with Rose, right? And you're not really clear. And then Jannah, you've got her also, and they kind of have a thing. And I'm like, okay, maybe Finn just likes everybody. Maybe Finn, hasn't, since he probably didn't have, a whole relationship status in the First Order. Maybe they didn't have time for that. And since he's been out, he's been too busy fighting. So maybe he's just looking to like grab, a night alone with somebody and kind of relieve some tension. And I couldn't blame him for that. That's war, I'm sure, kind of. You saw some of that with Poe too. Poe was certainly trying to get some kisses, is what I'll say. PG-13, family friendly channels here. So, but yeah. I think Finn may have had feelings for her, but I think it was more, more caring, like deeply caring about somebody, rather than just, oh, I love you, and it's as simple as that. So, like some of you are echoing that he feels the Force, like that he's Force sensitive. I think that's definitely what he was going to say. However, if that was actually part of what was cut from the film, I think it makes sense, because it may have taken too long. I would have gladly sat for like an extra 20 minutes of footage or whatever. So I would have loved to have seen a little bit more with Finn, because so watching it the second time, this was one of the things I looked for, is more about Finn with his other connection to the Force. Like, there was a couple more times where thinking that, I was like, they never answered that. Was it something other than "I love you"? So watching it the second time, I was like, okay, there's more things where he says, I feel it. I feel the Force. The Force brought me here. The Force brought me where I am. The Force brought me to Rey. So like, I think if you weren't Force sensitive, you wouldn't have had that connection. So I definitely think it was maybe not a simple statement of, oh, Rey, by the way, I'm Force sensitive. Like, I don't think it would have been that, but he would have been like, I think he would have, like, how would you have articulated what he would have said? He's like, that power, I feel it too, and I when you get a chance, I know you're really busy, but I was wondering if you could train me. I think that's basically what he would have said. I think he was going to ask Rey to train him, and I'm hoping that that's kind of, if they go in the future, I'm hoping that's kind of something that happens. One of the things that was on my list, I don't know if you guys saw, like, I had done a video like of like the negative hype, some of the negative reviews before Rise of Skywalker came out, and I was talking about some of my wish lists. One of the things on my wish list was to see him hold a lightsaber, and because he used it twice in Episode 7. And he actually did get to hold a lightsaber. It was very brief. And, like, you blink and you'd miss it. But it was like when they were they're in the cave, and Rey has got the snake. Finn's holding the lightsaber. He's doing it more like as a flashlight, but he was holding it. And you could tell he was just like, I'm gonna hold this thing as tight as I can, and I don't want to have to give it back. But yeah, so I dig that. So I think that was this. I think that's the potential. That's bad if you want to see the same cast in Episode 10. I don't know. Some people are, I don't know what they're going to do with Episode 10, and we'll see. We'll see. If they do something like Episode 10, I think it'll be probably at least 10 or 20 years from now. I think they can jump pretty far into the future. That will let all of these actors kind of move on. A lot of people don't like to continue to be roped into Star Wars. Daisy Ridley, I think, said that she kind of doesn't want to do any more right now. Of course, time will change that. And of course, if she needs a paycheck in like 20 years, then maybe she'll do that as well. It's entirely possible. So hope, and I wouldn't mind that. I think it's hard to say right now, because I know I felt a certain way when the prequels came out versus now. It's been 20 years or so. They grow on you over time as kids grow up with them. And then, like, my kids, this may be the first Star Wars a lot of kids have ever seen. So in 20 years or so, like, there may be a whole new market for this cast. So they very well may do a 10, 11, 12 in the future. So first question basically was, what was Finn going to say to Rey? I think it was something about, Force sensitivity, feeling the Force, wanting to know more about it, wanting to really have a talk with her about it. And of course, that's why he wouldn't want to say it in front of Poe. Some of you saying there will be no Episode 10, the saga is done. Well, they could do an Episode 10, and it doesn't have to revolve around the Skywalker saga. It could be about Finn. It could be about, it could totally be all about Finn. Maybe Finn has a family. Finn and Jannah, maybe they have a family, and they go off on their own Jedi adventures. Doesn't have to follow Rey or Luke Skywalker at all. I mean, she could do a cameo in it. That'd be nice fan service, and I think fan service is clearly the way to go. But they may not do Episode 10, and they also might go forward in this time period without doing episodes. They may just do, like, Finn, a Star Wars story, just a standalone movie all about him that's not tied to anything else. They could totally do that. But another question. I'm going to move on to the next question, because we got a lot of unanswered questions to talk about. Snoke. This one's related to Snoke. So this is like a multi-part question, because first off, I think the number of questions that we probably have about Snoke is amplified even more so than we had before. And that's cool. And I guess I don't feel bad that we have these questions. I don't feel like I needed to have all of these questions answered by the movie, but it does make me curious about more information. Like, I kind of would love to have a Snoke book at this point. Like, and I normally don't like, I'm going to get to some questions real quick. Hold on. Baby Yoda grown up in Episode 10, that would be funny. I'm warned there'll be no Episode 10s. Sure, maybe not. Some of you would like to go back to the Old Republic. Some people say no for the Old Republic. So, interesting. But yeah, an Aura spinoff about some of those other deserters from the First Order. That is a cool idea. But yes, so we need some more Snoke information, and this is a fun one. This one to me leans a lot more on the lines of a nitpick, where I'm just like, wait a second, you made Snoke? Well, then how come he never mentioned you? Was he supposed to keep Palpatine's secrets, or did Snoke go rogue? Because Snoke seemed immensely powerful, like crazy. I guess Palpatine was immensely powerful too. Okay, to be fair, yeah. But like, Snoke did not seem like the type of person that would have served a master. Yeah, so I'm like really curious about, like, if Snoke was Snoke working for Palpatine, because I think that's kind of the implication. But then if you go back and you watch the other stuff with Snoke, he doesn't seem like the type who would be beholden to any master. So that's the thing. Or did Snoke go rogue, right? That's kind of a big question I have today, because also, if Snoke certainly shrouded himself with opulence. He had the golden robes. He had this huge ship. It almost seemed wasteful from a certain point of view. So it could be that Snoke maybe was misusing some of the authority that Palpatine maybe had given him, or maybe, I mean, nobody knew about Palpatine at all though. So maybe, Palpatine wasn't really pulling the strings as much, and it was just kind of, maybe they were kind of working together. Or was Snoke, and what was Snoke made from? What was Snoke? Was Snoke, like, the visual dictionary doesn't really tell us anything either. I did pick up the visual dictionary, kind of disappointed. I mean, it's cool. It's got a lot of cool information, but like, there's no B-wings in the visual dictionary. I'm like, they got 8. Of course, they're talking about the T-70X. We don't need information on the T-70. We've got it all. And same thing with the A-wing. It's got pages on all of those. And I'm like, okay, we got a page on the Y-wing, but nothing on the B-wing. It's like the B-wing wasn't even in the movie, and there were lots of B-wings in the movie. So get annoyed with that stuff. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. So Snoke, what was Snoke made from? Was he a specific person or was he cloned from Palpatine? Doesn't look like Palpatine. Might have been cloned from like another Sith supporter. I think they left that open enough deliberately to do a backstory with Snoke. So I guess the second question I have is, well, what about the other 2 Snokes? Because there is like a cloning that has 2 more Snokes in there that we see. So like Palp's got like more Snokes ready to go in the bacta tanks or the cloning vats or whatever it was that I think those were meant to be cloning vats. Like they may have been failed, or they may have been still cooking. They might have been ready to go. They might have been. I just don't know. So what's going to happen with those other 2 Snokes? Like that would be a really cool question. Like maybe they're halfway ready to go, and so you got like two Snokes roaming the galaxy in like a follow-up story that are like, they've got some power but they're confused because the process was incomplete. And then you could have like a crazy Snoke, insane Snoke, and like one's like, brother, calm down, and the other one's like, stuff like that. Like that might be a little bit crazy. Maybe I'm getting a little bit too EU, kind of Jorah Sabaoth kind of, like something like that. But I guess there's there's the possibility of some future stuff there. So I kind of dig that. I kind of dig that there's a lot of little Easter egg. I don't know if I'd call that an Easter egg. That was in plain sight. But I'm really curious what's going to happen with the future of those little Snoke clones that I think you can presume that they just got crushed in the rubble as things were collapsing. But they were far enough away from where he was talking, like that little throne room, where it might, they could write it out however they wanted to. I'd suspend my disbelief for that. Another thing about Snoke too is going back to Episode 8. He had his own Praetorian Guard, right? So I guess the next question is, who were they? Because they clearly were not the Knights of Ren. That was one of the questions I had after Episode 8, and they weren't. They didn't appear to be Force sensitive. They just appear to be elite warriors, right? So my guess right now is like, well, since we've got this whole army of Sith troopers and Sith loyalists that were fielding like the crewing the fleet, and as well as all these workers, apparently Palpatine had an entire other empire's worth of people ready to go. Where were the Praetorian Guard from these people? That might make sense. They might have also, and the cool thing is, and this is probably stuff that's maybe not even written yet, but maybe the Praetorian Guard were sent there to also, like, to protect Snoke, but also to keep an eye on Snoke. Like, maybe they had to report back to Palpatine. It's like, yes, my lord, he's still following the plan. We got his golden pajamas today. They do fit, so that's good, my lord. And, yes, and, oh yeah, He thinks he's close to finding Luke Skywalker, something like that. Maybe the Praetorian Guard were Palpatine's eyes and ears over Snoke, because Snoke was powerful enough that maybe he could have shielded his mind from Palpatine. I don't know. Or was it somebody, you pointed out that Snoke looked different between 7 and 8, and that makes sense. It could have just been a simple CGI thing, or the hologram thing, or improvements in technology. But you could also make the argument that it was a different Snoke in 7 and a different Snoke in 8. Like, maybe they had to cycle out clones. Maybe he did, like one of you just said, maybe he had a short lifespan. So yeah, a lot of Snoke questions. I think there is more Snoke questions now than there were before, and I'm okay with that. I think that would be very, very interesting to me. I would like to really learn more about Snoke, and also about like original leaders of the First Order, like Rey Sloane we still don't have a story about her. And I think that kind of allows them to really paint the picture of like how did Rey Sloane kind of work at the beginning of the First Order, because she's a book character, very very popular, very awesome character too. She was very good too. I don't think she would have let the First Order become as evil as it had. So I'm sure at some point she must have been ousted or had to run away. Maybe she even ended up being part of the fleet that we see, of the galaxy rising up at the end. So next question. So I'm gonna jump to another one. Is Jannah? She was I without I don't know. This isn't. I don't know if this counts as a spoiler, but this is something that I guess was reported on, because she's talking to Lando at the end of the movie, and I didn't. I tried to stay away from spoilers or whatever. But she's sitting there at the end talking to Lando, and he's like, "Hey, where are you from?" She's like, "Oh, I don't know." He's like, "Well, let's go find out." And they don't do anything with it. I'm like, okay, are they starting a new story arc there? What is going on with that? Now, from what I'm told, that there was more deleted scenes between Jannah and Lando, and that she was actually his daughter, and she was taken from him, and so like going back and watching some of the scenes again the second time. This is kind of why I wanted to see the movie twice. Lando, when he's on Pasana and he's just like, "Oh, my flying days are behind me," Well, his daughter was taken from him there, and then like the First Order abducted his child, and that's why it's something along with that story. He just decided he was going to stay there and either mourn, or like he was kind of a broken man after that, after he failed to protect his child. And so I guess the story was supposed to be that, after the battle, he realizes that she was taken from the same place that he lost his child, and then they figure it out that she's his daughter or whatever. But apparently that was cut from the film. Now, I am curious, why would they cut that part out, but then still leave this whole, like, conversation about them that's all, like, leading up to it? Like, it just makes you ask the question. I'm like, well, maybe you should have cut that part out too, or just left a little bit more, a few extra lines in there, because that would have been kind of cool to find out that Lando had more of a personal stake in this battle. Like, the First Order stole my daughter. Like, we don't even know that he had a daughter, because they cut all this stuff out. And I'm also curious, when they cut major things like that out of the movie, is it still canon? Like, if it was part of the story and they just couldn't show it, like, I don't know if cut scenes. I guess cut scenes aren't canon, because Shakti would have died like 3 different times or something like that. So I'm not. Yeah, I guess cut stuff isn't canon. So if they cut it and it's not canon, why even have Jannah talking to Lando at this point? Yeah. Why no Chiss? No, that's an interesting question. I think the Chiss is a story. I think they're setting all of that stuff aside for a whole different set of stories. I really hope that they go live action with the Chiss. Of course, the makeup budget would be pretty interesting there, but that could be a really more of a fleet based, more of a almost like a Star Trek type of movie that has a lot more ship combat, and a little bit of bridge officer talk, and then more ship combat. I would love to see a Chiss movie or a Chiss series of movies dealing with the aftermath with Ezra and Thrawn. All right, you're a massive fan. Can you have a shout out? Mr. Finners, thanks for watching. All right, so I've got another next question. This one's a simpler one. We got Wedge Antilles, and that was awesome. We did get Wedge Antilles, but he was a gunner in the Millennium Falcon. I'm like, wait a second, couldn't they put Wedge in an X-wing cockpit? Why was he on board the Millennium Falcon? Like, and the thing is that I don't understand. Like, now, granted, this is a nitpick. I'm grateful that we had Wedge. Out of all the things they cut, I'm glad that Wedge's, 0.7 seconds of screen time. Actually, he was on a second time too. He was on the ground, and he had a cool white flight suit that we barely got to see too. I wanted to see that. But why was he a gunner in the Falcon? Now, that's good for X-wing players, because that means you're probably going to get a Wedge gunner card, and it's probably going to be a really good gunner card. Probably. But my thing is, we got Wedge, and there was no explanation. Like, it would have just made perfect sense if he was in an X-wing, or maybe even like I would have bought it if he was in a B-wing, A-wing, or Y-wing. If he was piloting something, right? Like, why wasn't he piloting? There was a book that came out, like Rise of the Resistance, that deals with him coming out of retirement. Like, they already did the whole story of Wedge coming out of retirement, and then he was you know, he wanted to go fly again. Like there was nothing in that book that kind of said, well, Wedge could only rejoin the fight if he could only, had to be a gunner or something like that. There's nothing about that, And where was Nora? Because Wedge is married to Nora Wexley, Snap Wexley's mom, and they were like inseparable. And if you're gonna show Wedge, was Nora in the other gunner seat? Maybe like that. I mean, that might have made sense, but like, I would have really loved to have seen Nora. Little things like that would have been really cool. I would have loved to see old lady Nora Wexley gunning in the Falcon, like looking back, like, and she shouts to Wedge and she says something like, "Don't get cocky" or something. Again, maybe it was in there, maybe it got cut. I don't know. But yeah. If they would have called in and he would have been like, rogue leader. Yes, if he would have said rogue leader standing by, like they should have done a whole standing by thing. They really should have. You could have had so many. You could have had Hera in the Ghost being like, Phoenix leader standing by. You could have had all your cameos in one epic scene. Or even Jason Syndulla. You could have had Jason Syndulla. All you need to do is get a human, give him probably contacts and green hair. It would have been easy. But I assume a lot of that stuff is deliberate for stories for another day. Now, as soon as I started this video, somebody was just like, I have a question, and so this is where we come to that. How exactly did Ben Solo get to Exegol? I mean, they showed him just land there in a TIE fighter. Okay. So we got to set a couple of things up there. Now, I understand for purposes of just telling the story, he came there to follow her. Okay, that's basically, as far as watching the movie, that's all you need to know is that he came there to follow her. But now, as a Star Wars fan, I got to be like, wait 1 second. I understand that the TIE fighters in the movie that you see jump through hyperspace. They chase the Millennium Falcon through hyperspace. Now, I understand that because the TIE Whisper, there's a new classification of, there's two TIE Whisper types. There's that Interceptor Whisper that Kylo Ren has, and then there's the regular TIE Fighter Whispers. Their big jump with those is that they have hyperdrive. You see that pretty early in the movie. Lots of TIE fighters jumping to hyperspace, chasing the Falcon. Apparently, they're all doing hyperspace tracking now, or something like that. I don't know. I don't. I guess that's another question: is how in the hell were they following? Maybe if you're right behind, you can just go along the same course. But had they know to drop out at the same time? I don't know. Maybe advanced hyperdrive. My point is, we understand that the new TIE fighters had hyperdrives. But that's not what Ben Solo landed in. He landed in a TIE FO, Return of the Jedi era TIE fighter. First off, where did he find a fully intact, flight-ready, TIE fighter on board? Because we did see that there were ships on the Death Star, right? The Death Star's wreckage. We saw there was a Lambda. We saw lots of broken TIE fighter wings. And it did not seem like any ship would have been intact. And even if it was kind of intact, probably would have been flight-ready. And even if it was flight ready, it wouldn't have had a hyperdrive. So what exactly had there, right? Now, I mean, we can explain away answers for that. One answer might have been that he did find maybe a Lambda shuttle or a TIE fighter or something, and that he just had a comm device or whatever, and called the First Order, said, hey, send a pickup, and they sent him a TIE Whisper, and it could be that maybe the ship he landed in was a TIE Whisper, and it looked like a TIE fighter to us. Maybe the shadows, it could have been that it was really a TIE Whisper or something like that. Or maybe he had to call maybe there was only a couple of TIE Whispers. Maybe they don't have that many. Maybe he called the First Order or whatever and said, hey, I need I need a transport. So they came and picked him up, and then he navigated them through the unknown regions to Exegol, then said, give me a TIE. Well, sir, we have a firefight. That's fine. Give me one of the old TIEs. That's fine. We got one of the old ones, and he just landed in one of those. It might have been a TIE FO, or maybe it might have been a TIE LN or something like that. And a TIE LN, Galactic Civil War TIE. All right, so they may have had one of those in the hangar or something like that. So you can always you can explain it away if you want to, but like a lot of us, I think a lot of people were thinking, wait a second, that looks like a normal TIE fighter. How in the hell did he get there? Now, he is still the supreme leader. Right, just because he had a momentary okay, I just decided to throw my lightsaber away. Well, that doesn't mean he's not in charge of the First Order anymore. So obviously he could have called somebody that could have given him a lift. So that's kind of my canon, or my head canon right now. Is he probably pulled out his belt. He's like, yeah, this is the supreme leader. I need to pick up So somebody probably gave him a lift. He probably got there that way. And he probably landed in a TIE fighter, but didn't fly. Obviously, he couldn't have flown through hyperspace in a TIE fighter because there were no TIE Whispers available there. But then again, maybe I don't know. What do you guys think? Does that sound reasonable to you guys? I mean, we can just easily say, "Oh, bad writing" or whatever. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe, but that's no fun. It's not fun for me to just say, "Oh, bad writing, throw it away." No, let's try and figure it out. Or if we can't come up with anything, then we really got a problem. Another thing is the Holdo maneuver. They talked about the Holdo maneuver, and they said it was 1 in a million chance. So, what makes that a 1 in a million chance, right? So I was talking to somebody about this last night. I really liked the explanation. So a little context here. They're getting ready to, they're going to jump to Exegol. They're going to fight. They don't have that many people. Lando's like, hey, I'm going to go and try and rally our allies or whatever. I agree with you, by the way. Matt Berry says it's unimportant how he got there. I get that. And I'm not trying to harp on it. I'm just doing this as a form of nitpicking because it's fun to sit there and theory craft about these little details because that's what sustained Star Wars fans for like 30 years, right? So I mean, it's fun to nitpick these type of things. After Return of the Jedi, before Phantom Menace, all we had was that's some of the things that spawned the Star Wars role playing game, like all those minor little details. So I'm really just curious about the minor little details right now. Because that one is a little bit more than minor. Like if it's implied that he just picked up found a spare TIE fighter on the Death Star and flew all the way there, like a lot of Star Wars fans are gonna be like, that's impossible, But so that's why I'm curious about it because it's for fun. Where can you buy those lightsabers at? Well, all of these ones behind me are the Star Wars Black Series Hasbro Star Wars Black Series lightsabers. You can get them at Hasbro.com. They sell them at GameStop or ThinkGeek. This one is from Galaxy's Edge. Galaxy's Edge. This one's these are about $50 each. This one was $200, but you got to make it yourself. And also the blade comes out, and you can replace the kyber crystal in it. You get to build it yourself. You can custom. I got a yellow kyber crystal in there right now. So these are super awesome. But all right, so so as they're getting ready to do this battle, Dominic Monaghan's character is like, oh, I need to do some Holdo maneuvers, and I'm like, okay, I was glad that they kind of addressed what Holdo did in Episode 8, and they're saying hey, this is the ultimate, we can take out a whole fleet with one ship, do some real damage. So he was acknowledging all of that. But the next part is the thing. I'm like, Finn's like, that was a 1 in a million shot. Next question. I'm like, whoa. I like that you guys addressed it. I don't like how it was addressed. So, first off, I like the idea that the only reason she was able to go into hyperspace with a giant ship in front of them is because they had hyperspace tracking enabled. So they were partially in hyperspace, right? They were partially in hyperspace, so that allowed by using that and the fans came up with that explanation. By using that explanation, that A, explains why it'll never happen again, explains why B, hyperspace tracking will never happen again, because it's just absolutely disastrous, and it's too risky, and it causes things like that. So nobody wants to be partially in hyperspace all the time, because it allows somebody to ram you and, suicide to everybody nearby, so it's not worth it. And that's the most elegant solution possible. So that's what it should have been. But that's not what they said. They said it's a 1 in a million shot. So now we have to think. I'm going to get some props here. We're going to use some props. Let's use. Let's use. I would use the Superstar Destroyer, but I'm not going to. I'm going to use. I'll use a Liberty MC-80. Okay. So she's all right. We've got the Star Destroyer here. Holdo's turning this ship around. Oh, it goes into hyperspace. Now, I guess it depends on how they're defining hyperspace, because maybe at a certain point, once you enter, you jump out of existence. And maybe she needed to line it up so that she jumped out of existence right, here. As she was, it's the exact spot. Otherwise, before or after, it wouldn't have done anything, right? Or something like that. I'm not sure. Because here's my problem with all of that. If you can even start to go into hyperspace while pointed, at another ship, that kind of invalidates the entire premise of the third act of Return of the Jedi, with the whole fleet saying, "Oh, we only need to keep them from escaping." Well, you kept them from escaping because you had giant ships in front of you. You had gravity wells. You also had originally it was just the ships that were in the way, but then we also learned an interdictor was there, creating a bigger gravity field, so to keep them from jumping away in different directions as well. Basically, the point is you can't go into hyperspace. There's a ship in front of you, so it being a 1 in a million shot doesn't even make sense. Like, I really, really have questions on like why they didn't just go with the fan theory, because the fan theory was so perfect and answered everything, you know. And what makes it 1 in a million shot? If you've only got a 1 in a million shot, maybe that should be the default response every single time anyway, because hey, we're gonna die, but we do have a 1 in a million shot. Oh, see, and I get the meme of Jim Carrey going, "So you're telling me there's a chance," right? Like, if you have a 1 in a million shot, always take that shot, because it worked for Luke Skywalker. It worked for Amilyn Holdo, right? Like, it worked for Jim Carrey. Wait, no, actually, it didn't work for Jim Carrey. But the 2 out of 3 ain't bad. My point is, that should always be the case. You should always try to do that as the default response. And if it doesn't work, what happens if it fails? Do you go into hyperspace, not hit the ship, and emerge safely on the other side? That's a win. Do you go at the ship, not go into hyperspace, but still crash into the ship, causing some damage? Okay, well, the alternative was just getting shot and dying, so that's still a net positive. So, like, I'm really curious what 1 in a million really means in that case. So that's one of my big questions. Let's go to the audience here. Let's see. I'm looking for some. Well, yeah, we're talking about Palpatine. A lot of stuff. Okay, all right. Cyborg Man's question. A lot of you guys are talking about. When did Palpatine have kids? Well, that one's not as hard to answer. Of course, they never really went into it. But, dude, what's the point of having galactic domination if you're not going to get your freak on at least a little bit? I mean, that's kind of the point. You should be able to pick and choose at that point, right? So he could have, right? But there was also a bald woman that you would see by Palpatine's side a lot, and I would imagine, again, I don't read like the history on every single background character. I don't know if she was an advisor or who she was as far as on like Wikipedia or anything like that. But you certainly he was at the opera with that girl also. She was in his office a couple of times, and he would dismiss her. I got the impression that was like his mistress or something like that, and so he could have had a child with her. He could have had a child at any point during the original trilogy. So there's a lot of opportunities for that. He may have had dozens and dozens of kids. He may have been pulling a straight like. Kids are watching. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Careful about the freak on. But yeah, so he might have had lots of children. That's entirely possible. All right, so I guess the next. Oh, all right. Here's a good one. Was she around for Chancellor Valorum? I'm not sure, but either way, Palpatine can use the Force too, so he can kind of make people do whatever he wants them to do. All right, so I have a good one for you guys. We see a single Sith destroyer, and that's what I'm going to call the new. I think that's their name, the new Star Destroyers. They're Sith destroyers. They made it out, or the one Sith destroyer made it out of the maw. You know, Palpatine's like, we'll send one to go destroy. The wife with the PG, she's like, hey, careful how much you talk about certain things. Spoilers, right? But if the one Sith destroyer made it out and destroyed that one planet, yeah, it was 1 million to 1 shot. I understand that, but it was so. Again, somebody said the Holdo maneuver wasn't retconned. No, but I'm saying, why wasn't it? That's my question. I get that. John Boyega says it was, or Finn says it was 1 million to 1 shot, but that doesn't. That's kind of a weaker explanation, because that adds even more options. Like, well, why wouldn't you do it anyway? Like, you know, I mean, it looked like they had 1 million ships. They could have, you know. Anyway, so the Sith destroyer makes it out of, Exegol and goes and just blows up a planet just to kind of demonstrate their power. And I think there's a lot of questions about that. First off, if one ship made it out, like, why did all the other ships need, why couldn't the other ships make it out? Right? Like, the whole premise for this final battle, this nav tower, I got so many questions about this nav tower in the final battle and making it out. So first off, let's talk about the nav tower. Why did you need a ground team when that nav tower is on the, like, do you not have a proton torpedo? Right? Like, I mean, you were right there, you're flying. Okay, this thing is here. Their fleet is flying. Oh, okay, hold on. Instead of shooting it, let's just drop some horses. You're like, and of course, then it shuts down. And they're like, oh, we're gonna. Well, you could have just powered it back up. Like, if I were the First Order, as soon as they all turned away, I would have powered that one back up. Right? Like, why not blow it up anyway and then move to the other one? Right? And you can. Why not do it from orbit? Why do you have to have a ground team? I mean, maybe it was shielded, but you didn't see any shield generators anywhere near. It looked like it was a barren wasteland with one thing on the ground, and they just didn't shoot it. Right? They used all their proton torpedoes on Starkiller Base. Right? That's what somebody's saying. Yeah, they never showed them destroying it. So again, my headcanon, I'll have to say, it was probably shielded. In the same way that the Empire didn't just nuke Hoth Echo Base from orbit in Episode 5. So that's fine. But yeah, like, why not just take it out anyway? Maybe it was been too much of a movement to get everybody down. But then why did the First Order just power that one back up right away? Either way, that's kind of like a more of a nitpicky thing. I guess they wanted to set up the cool kind of scene where everybody riding on the Star Destroyer. My guess is when they were planning this movie, like JJ or somebody had this vision, it's like, what if we had dudes on horses and a chick with a bow and arrow? We blended Lord of the Rings with Star Wars, and he had this idea. It's like, I have to come up with a way to manufacture this scene, and that's the explanation that they came up with. A little bit kind of not the best scene in the movie, like maybe one of my least favorite parts of the movie. I mean, kind of was cool, but they definitely felt like they forced that scene. But then it seems even more pointless because one of the Star Destroyers, one of the Sith Destroyers, already got out anyway and was blowing up a planet. So they've already got one out in the middle of the galaxy blowing up planets. What happened to that one? It's still out there, right? Like, it wouldn't, like, that's the other thing too, is like, after this whole thing is over, you've still got a planet killer out there loose in the galaxy that's probably mad, when it gets the email that Palpatine's dead. So, there's got to be some aftermath here. Like, of course, I'm sure somebody will be like, oh, well, the new Resistance went and, blew that one up too, or whatever. They crashed the Star Destroyer into the tower. Well, yeah, the Star Destroyer, when the Star Destroyers started falling down, they were destroying everything. But by that point, it was too late. I'm saying they should have jumped them out much sooner. But yeah, so, but the other thing is, if that one Star Destroyer made it out, why did they all need the nav tower anyway? If you can send them out, like, they already proved they can send a Star Destroyer out, well, why not send the rest? Like, it might have been like, they weren't quite ready yet, and we just have... how many do we have ready to go? Well, we got one that's ready to go. The prototype is ready to go right now. The rest of them are going to need like 6 more hours. It might have been something like that, But and that's me just trying to justify and come up with explanations as to why. But I guess the follow-up question is, what's going to happen to that Sith destroyer that is loose in the galaxy right now? It would make for a really cool story, like about like the last like Sith in the galaxy, and we're all like, what do? We have no master now. Maybe there's a mutiny, and who knows? I mean, like, it could be kind of cool. Maybe maybe Saw Gerrera's got some like great grandchildren that are gonna like rescue this thing, and then take the super weapon and start to blow up First Order worlds, and then you have this whole kind of like, I don't know. Anyway, so that one is an interesting one. Let's jump. Who are all the robed figures on the secret Sith planet? All right, so good question. I'm gonna take some audience questions because I have a couple more, but they're better saved for the end because they're lighter questions. So, as far as all those robed figures, I believe that was the ghosts of the Sith, basically. I think they were all Sith ghosts, because if you notice, like you didn't see all of them at the beginning, and there were like millions of them, or at least hundreds of thousands, and like it seemed like Rey didn't see them until she was like right in the middle, facing Palpatine, and like kind of confronted with everything, and then it was very, somebody says very Lovecraftian. Yeah, I guess it is kind of Lovecraftian too. There obviously were a lot of Sith people, but those dudes all seemed like so old, like they were the spirits of all, because when Palpatine's saying that he is like every Sith that has come before him was all inside him, basically he was talking about like this whole, this is why it's the rule of two, like, I train you, then I have all the Sith in me, I train you, you kill me, then me as well as all the other 999,000 all go into you, and then you become all of the Sith, and then you got to keep that line going. And that's, I think that was basically all of the Sith that were in Palpatine is what you were seeing behind Rey. I think that they were kind of manifesting themselves there, almost like the Sith version of Force ghosts. That's kind of that was my interpretation of it. They could have all been physical old dudes too, but like that's a lot of mouths to feed. And I didn't see any farms on that planet, so I don't think they were physical people. I get that you're going to have some, you do have personnel and stuff, but you got to have like supply ships kind of running in through. You got to feed everybody. I didn't see any bathrooms there. You're not going to fit like a million Sith, like literal, a million dudes with no toilets. I didn't see a single toilet. So, these are things that I think about, and I'm allowed to think about those things because the Mandalorian has at least addressed those things, right? Oh, by the way, if you guys follow, I'm not doing a Mando chat this weekend. I'm kind of postponing that until the end since the whole schedule and the holidays has kind of screwed a lot of things up. So we're going to postpone Mando chat, and we'll eventually get back to Mando chat. All right, so let's see. We got any other audience questions? I'm gonna give you guys a simple one. Do you think we'll see Ben Solo come back as a Force ghost? Do you think we're going to see Ben Solo come back as a Force ghost? I say that because he did disappear. He became one with the Force in the same way that Yoda did, in the same way that Luke did. Do you think that they're saving that for maybe a future? Like, I feel like they've set up a lot of stuff for the future. And why show him become one with the Force if not to just keep that door open for him to come back as a Force ghost at some point in time? I would like to see that. But yeah, it's I agree with you. Yeah, why not? And that's kind of about how I feel. Like, I don't think it's necessary. I do think it might have been nice to see him, like when you saw Luke and Leia as the Force ghosts at the end, kind of saying goodbye to Rey. It would have been nice to see Ben there also, kind of saying goodbye to Rey. Well, Adam Driver is very expensive and probably wants to do other things. Sure. And I don't mean like next year. I'm talking like 10 or 20 years from now. It would be kind of cool if he came back as an elder kind of Force ghost or something like that. Or hey, there was cloning facilities there. Maybe they can clone him. Oh, by the way, did you guys notice? I want you to notice, if you go see the movie again, I want you to notice something. When Ben turns back to the light, his scar across his face is gone. It's like a physical thing. It's a physical thing. If you watch this again, go see that. All right, so, and I think it has something to do with like when Rey heals him. She does more than just heal his body. I think she heals his spirit too. But she also heals his body. So it's like the scar, like she heals him better than technology ever could, which I thought was really, really cool. And so like there was something about it, like I could tell by the look on his face that he had changed, but it didn't click until the second viewing. So watch that again, watch the scars on his face. Well, then after Rey heals him and they're looking at each other and then she walks away and leaves him, like he's got no more scar on his face at that point. And it's very cool that like the symbology was there. This is the things that are like, these are little details that you'll go back and see this again and again. And you're gonna be like, okay, this was a better movie than I thought the first time around. I think so. Did you see Wedge during the final battle? Yes, yeah, we talked about Wedge a little bit, so we got some people that are joining in later. My question earlier was, why was Wedge a gunner and not a pilot? I don't really have a good answer for that, unless maybe Nora was in the other, because again, the Falcons got 2 gunner slots. Who was in the other gunner slot? Hopefully it was Nora Wexley. Should have been, because that would at least have made sense if they wanted to be in the same ship. I also wanted to see a whole bunch of Force ghosts at the end. Now, I'm happy though that we at least got a bunch of Force ghost voices at the end, and that was really cool. If you blink, there were so many voices. You had, I think, Ki-Adi-Mundi. You had Mace Windu. You had Ahsoka. Of course, Anakin and Obi-Wan and Luke, Leia, and there was a lot of voices. So I loved that. It's one of those things that you like. I think and I needed to stick around, but again, it's hard when the credits are rolling and you have to use the bathroom. I wanted to stick around and like photograph the end credits and see who was credited with doing voiceovers for that end scene, because I think there was an awful lot. Ahsoka was a voice. So is she dead now? Very good question. Considering we're so far in the future, there's a pretty good chance she could be. I don't think it means that she has to be, though. I think you can communicate and talk and share support and knowledge throughout the Force without being dead. I think that's entirely possible. I think you can communicate with Rey through the Force without being dead. In the same way that Luke talked to Leia at the end of Empire Strikes Back. You know, he's like, "Hear me, Leia," right? It was very, very, very simple to the way that Rey was saying, you know, "Be with me," right? Almost the same thing. So I think that means, oh, Kanan. Yes, Kanan was also one of them. So I think that works. I think you can say that. I think you can say that works. Let's see. And also Finn. That's another thing too. Like when Rey died, Finn felt it instantly. So that's why, like, go back to my very first question. You know, what was Finn going to say to Rey? I think it's that he's Force sensitive. That he, you know, something about him being Force sensitive. Either he wants training, or he feels a connection to her through the Force, or, you know, it's like, I can feel when you're sad. You know, and I can see you when you're sleeping, and I know when you're awake. I know if you've been bad or good. So be good, for goodness sake. I think that's what Finn was going to say. I think he was going to break out into Life Day carols. My last question, and there's going to be more. This is just the last of the ones that I wrote down. Rey's saber. First off, I guess I'm curious if you guys, like, if it was yellow or orange to you, because it looks kind of like in between. So I'm really curious if that was like a yellow or an orange saber. And I'm dropping stuff because this one is yellow and does not look as... It doesn't look as, like, orangey. But then again, this is under fluorescent lighting. It looked orange to me, but gold. I like the idea that it's gold. So if it was yellow, shouldn't that mean that she was a temple guardian, right? Or if it was a slightly different color. Now here's an interesting thing. Here's why I'm leaning a little bit more toward orange. Because I asked at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge if they had orange, and some people had said, we do not have orange yet. And I'm like, okay, I already know that orange is a canon color because in Master and Apprentice, the book, Obi-Wan, somebody swaps his kyber crystal with a different, it's not a kyber crystal, but it's a different type of crystal that's very similar, like a imitation kyber crystal. Blade comes out orange. And it was weak. It didn't kill somebody, just like zapped somebody. So it was like turned his lightsaber into a stun gun. But it was an orange blade. So that's already been canonized that there can be an orange color. It was just weak in that form, in that particular story. So we haven't seen an actual orange kyber crystal yet. So it could be orange, and it also could lead towards why people at Galaxy's Edge are saying is we don't have orange yet. Could just be something that, you know, they say that for any color. I'm like, hey, do you have a polka dot kyber crystal? No, we don't have that yet, sir. How can I make your day better? You know, it could be just part of the line. But it might have been. But I like the idea of it being kind of gold or orange, too. This is one of those things where it's like it really kind of depends on how you look at the shot, because the colors kind of look different to different people, and the subtleties between gold, orange, and yellow could be very, very minor, and you might really only be able to tell the difference when you compare it against something else. But also, was it a standard lightsaber that she built? Because obviously she was using part of her staff, right? She basically, to me, the very first time I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, she turned her staff into a lightsaber. I expected that to happen. The whole movie, you see her being more comfortable with her staff than with a lightsaber anyway. Like in that initial training scene, she finally gives up on the lightsaber and then just kills the thing with her staff in the first try. So and then even later on when they go to the other planets, she's carrying her staff with her the whole time. Like, why are you still carrying the stick when you've got a lightsaber? Well, because she's more comfortable with the staff. So initially I thought, hey, all she did was she put a kyber crystal and she put the circuitry into the end of her staff. So now she's got she's got like a force pike, basically. But my question is, they only showed like the tip, right? So it's like they only showed like this much of it. So you couldn't see what was below. You couldn't see if the whole rest of the staff was there. They just showed her like this and then, you know, like that. There was no Rancor tooth on there. That's just part of my thing. So, but then when they show her walking against the sunset, you didn't see a staff at all. So then I was thinking, like, so this is second viewing type of thing. I'm like, maybe she set it down. because there was no silhouette. And it ended with her kind of staring off into the twin suns. So if it was her whole staff, where was it? If it was just a regular, like if she just cut the tip off of the staff and just turned that part into the lightsaber, then it would have been hanging from her belt and you wouldn't have seen it. Okay, Alex, I'm going to get to your question in a minute. So I hope that it was actually a staff, and I'm actually curious if it was double bladed or not. That's really another question I have, because here's the question. There's a lot of questions about this. If she was more comfortable with her staff, then she would want a staff-sized weapon, a full-blown staff-sized weapon. It would be very awkward to have a full-sized staff and also have a lightsaber on it, right? Because she's got a full-sized staff, and so that would make it extremely awkward to wield. I guess it's cool to have the option. Oh, and boy, did you check out her activator switch? It was the whole ring around it, like this cog, as she spun the whole thing to activate it. That is the coolest looking saber hilt outside of Leia's, maybe, that I have ever seen. I loved that. So I loved Rey's saber, even though we couldn't really see the whole thing. And I wonder if that was deliberately hidden. Yeah, make that toy now, but what's the rest of it look like? If it's a double-bladed saber, then how big is the hilt, right? Because then it would be kind of long. It would have been about half as long as her normal thing, So I'm really curious what the rest of Rey's saber looks like, and I don't want to have to wait 20 years just to see. I want them to just tell us that. I want to really know. So I'm curious. All right, so now I'm going to take a few more questions. Alex asked, what's your opinion on Leia's conclusion scene? You felt that it was short, but due to the circumstances of Carrie Fisher's death. Yeah. It would be, right, Wolf, it would be like a naginata. All right, so Carrie Fisher's scene. I said this in my initial reactions video. Carrie's scenes were bad, and it wasn't because of Carrie. It's just because it was because of the circumstances. But they were... I almost wish they just had left Carrie out of the movie, because it kind of took away from the... It was so awkward, right? I felt really awkward in almost all of Carrie Fisher's scenes. Her end where she went to lay down, that part was good, but there were so many dialogue scenes with her where the dialogue just didn't fit. And it was so many, people oh, she mean... they only had dialogue of Leia saying no. The whole thing with Rey is oh, I'm going to go hunt down Palpatine, and I've got this plan, and I'm going to go do this, and we're going to go save the day. And he goes, no. Oh, what do you mean no? I need your blessing. I would do all all this stuff around just Leia saying no. It was so awkward. So a lot of Leia's scenes were just, as far as film, if you took out the fact that, we don't have Carrie Fisher anymore, you would look at that and say, wow, these scenes were really bad. Now, I understand why they did what they did. Sure, I get that. I'll give them a pass on it. As far as a real, being really critical, I'm going to give them a pass. But to be fair, it was bad. It might have been a better idea to just not use Carrie Fisher. Or to have a stand-in or something like that. Or just to have, her, and Leia says she needs to speak with everybody. These are the words of her. She's really busy, so she can't talk with you right now. They could have had... I would have liked if they had Lieutenant Connix just be her messenger, since that was her daughter anyway. The general says, blah, 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 blah. I kind of get that. I liked the ideas of Leia handing Rey the saber, and you kind of get the implication that Leia finished Rey's training or helped her along with her training. I liked that. I liked that. I also especially liked Leia's involvement in the story, even when it was, by mention of somebody else, Luke's Force Ghost telling us, yeah, Leia knew that you were a Palpatine too, but she trained you anyway because she could see what was in your heart. I liked that. It was good for the story. It showed that you can grow beyond your circumstances or whatever. But the scenes with Leia were not good. It was unfortunate. C-3PO's plot was weak. Yeah, I really expected C-3PO to shoot some stuff with that crossbow. There was a poster that came out for this movie a long, long time ago. It leaked way early, and they swore up and down it was fake. Disney said this poster is totally fake, and it had a picture of C-3PO holding a crossbow. And it turns out it was not a fake poster; it was a real poster. And but they kind of, it makes me think there was probably some deleted scenes of Yeah, HK-57, meatbags, right? I wanted C-3PO to start calling people meatbags and blowing them away. Some of his dialogue was great. Like, some things they did with C-3PO were really good in this movie. Like when Rey's like, you know the odds better than anybody. You tell us. And he's just like, well, crap. Nobody's actually... People have always told 3PO what to do. Rey gave him a choice here. And he's just like, well, I guess you're going to have to do this thing. And can we talk about Babu Freak? Babu Freak is like the cutest thing. Like, who is better? Who is cuter? Babu Freak or Baby Yoda? That's how I'm ending the video. I don't know if I got the answer to that. I don't know, because Babu can talk. Like, Baby Yoda looks cuter, but Babu can talk. Babu's got that voice, man. Babu Freak. Everybody, some people like, yeah. Hey, oh my God, Babu Freak, dude. Like, watch it the second time. See if you don't fall in love with little Babu. He's freaking cute, man. I think Baby Yoda has it. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to sign off. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me tonight. It's been a fun live stream. Thanks to all the patrons. Make sure you guys check out the links in the description below if you want to follow me on Twitter or Facebook, or if you want to support the channel on Patreon. And yeah, it's video schedules might be a little crazy over the next couple of days with holidays, and we got a lot of Christmas plans and all of that stuff. And I just didn't want to neglect you guys too much, so I wanted to do a live stream and all of that. So I'm going to talk to you guys later. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.